Okay, here's the train coming here now. Here she comes. Train coming into Enfield Station, and it's around 25 to 2, Dublin Connolly. There's people behind me here, and they probably think I'm mad. It's lunchtime here in Enfield. There's roadworks going on. Anyway, I'm just trying something else today for the fun. I've actually got another microphone there. So I'm just going to walk down the canal. But anyway, we got the money shot with the train. I saw a report there this morning in the Irish Times. I want to see, can I get down here this way? I may not be able to get down here. Oh, I can. Yeah, I saw a report in the Irish Times there this morning about newsagents. And, oh, there's somebody fishing down there. I better not go down there. Hi, how are you? Some young lad fishing. Yeah, I saw a report in the Irish Times there this morning, interesting story about, Jesus Christ, there's the good suit gone. Oh no, it's only water, or dew. Saw a story in the Irish Times there this morning about newsagents in Monkstown closed down there last week, all of a sudden, after something like 70 years trading. And it doesn't surprise me to see it happening. In fact, it surprises me that there is or was any pure newsagents still left. Oh Jesus, there's a phone expecting delivery. That's a fucking delivery that I'm supposed to be taking. It's a new computer there for the office of a legal intern there, and she's doing a couple of days, and we needed a computer for her. So, and unfortunately, for the second bloody time, I pre-populated or allowed the form online on Harvey Norman's site this time to pre-populate with the wrong air code. So when the guy rang me there now, he's telling me I'm outside your house there. It's got a red front door and it hasn't. That's the wrong bloody house. So he's coming in later on, hopefully. He's coming from DPD. Anyway, I was making the point there about newsagents and Hewitt's in Monkstown, trading there for something like 70 years. 70 years, and it closed down there last week. I can remember starting out in business first, and the ideal business to be in was in newsagents, because with a newsagents you had a sort of a franchise, and by that I mean pure newsagents. Back in the day there was gatekeepers, and it was actually difficult to get newspaper companies, independent newspapers, Irish Times, Newspread, Easton's to supply you. And back then you were either a newsagent or you weren't. If you were a newsagent, you were kind of official, and it gave you sort of a franchise, and obviously made newspapers, and having newspapers for sale, magazines and so on, very, very valuable, very lucrative. The good thing about the papers and magazines was the margins were very, very good as well. So the margins, and I'm going to just try something here now, the margins were from 20% upwards on magazines, newspapers and so on, and then you had returns as well. Not only that, but you weren't wasting your time with big box groceries and washing powder and stuff like that. So you had good margin, you had good working hours, and the perfect newsagent to have would have been, the perfect one would have been one in a shopping centre. Because one thing about retailing, that was always a problem. Let's get that fixed up there now. One thing about it, newsagents and retailing generally, that's always a problem, would be the hours, the working hours. But if you could get a newsagent in a shopping centre, then you were laughing. You had a nice tidy business, you hadn't any great physicality involved, you had nice trading hours because you were limited to the shopping centre trading hours, and that was the ideal. But that's changed. My video that I was making yesterday, when I got back to the office, I discovered that the audio on the second part of it was non-existent. I don't know what the hell. I was moving the camera at some stage and I tweaked the audio and it was non-existent. The point I was making about the newsagents game is that when we started, myself and my brother started in business in 1986 at Hart's Corner, being a newsagent had a certain cachet, had a certain status to it, and it was a good business. There was a sort of a franchise, there was sort of barriers to entry, and the reason for that was because the newspaper companies wouldn't supply anybody. You had to be a recognised official newsagent, and we weren't. So we ended up trading with or buying our newspapers off a guy called Joe. And Joe, his mother was a newspaper trader. She was one of the ladies who'd be in around the city centre there selling the Press or Herald. And Joe, she was from Finglas, Joe was from Finglas obviously as well. And he continued it on. And you'd find Joe in around the Bank of Ireland there at College Green selling his newspapers. But Joe, therefore, was a sort of had an account, and his parents or his mother had an account with the various newspaper companies. So the likes of the Independent or Irish Times and so on, they supplied Joe, and Joe then in turn supplied a whole lot of unofficial little shops like mine, myself and my brother's shop out in Glasnevin, and other shops there on the north side and indeed in the south side. So we were buying newspapers, we were buying all our papers from the likes of Joe, and it was sort of a great trade. In other words, we were unofficial, we were getting the papers from him, we were providing a good service to our customers, to the people who came into our shop, but we weren't official newsagents and we weren't getting the full margin. Joe was getting the full margin. He was giving us some all right. We weren't getting the full margin. But we were happy to get the papers because getting papers and so on did ensure that we had good footfall into the shop and so forth. That was the situation then. And then eventually the newsagents or the newspaper companies let their guard down to an extent and they began to supply far more people. And then 10, 15, 20 years later, things had completely changed. There was no such thing as an official newsagent anymore. Virtually anybody could get newspapers or magazines or whatever if they chose to, and the newspaper companies did not refuse to supply. And that saw the disintegration of the pure newsagent from what was a sort of a protected industry, a protected species, to a free-for-all. And going into the likes of convenience stores and so on, that was the way that you had to go. You had to supply the market, and going convenience store was really the route for most people to make a change or to progress with the times. But some people didn't move. Some people stuck in a pretty rigid way and they said, we're just newsagents, we're happy just being newsagents. But that game was over. That game was over, and that changed over time, and the people who stuck their feet into the ground and said, we're not moving, we're not changing, we're going to be official newsagents, we're going to continue the same thing, they got caught out. And basically the newsagents then were no longer protected, and were no longer official, and they didn't have the protection of the supply from the newspaper companies, or lack of supply from newspaper companies. Now, if you moved and changed and adapted to the changing circumstances, then you ended up with maybe a Spar or a Centra or some sort of a shop like that, a convenience store, and you were fine. But if you didn't move with the circumstances, if you didn't change with the times, if you didn't adapt, well, then you're going to end up very much like the unfortunate newsagents that have closed down there in Monkstown last week, and which I read about in the newspaper this morning. So that's it. And in terms of moving and changing and so on, there's a petrol station over here, petrol station over there. It's an Applegreen. Not sure whether you can see it or not. Petrol station over there someplace. There's the Applegreen petrol station up there. Back in 2005, 2006, 2007, I would have been over there selling petrol, selling diesel, selling cigarettes, dipping tanks. And now I'm over this side of the road. Let me just zoom out there. Now I'm over this side of the road, a different side of the road, and that's an indication of how you really have no choice sometimes but to adapt and move with the times, or you wither and die. And if there's one thing that's certain in business, absolutely certain, that is it changes, that nothing stays the same, and you do have to adapt. Anyway, hope you find the video useful. That is, as I say, that I'm calling the video sort of the death of the newsagents or whatever. I'm sorry to see this newsagents in Monkstown go, Hewitts, but that's the nature of business. As I say, it changes over time. If you don't change and adapt with it, well, then you're going to get caught out. And as I say, 2006, 2007, I was over there filling petrol. Now I'm over here. And funny enough, in 2006 or 7, when I was over there filling petrol, I was giving people my opinion on all sorts of things, and some people would listen, some people wouldn't listen. Now the change is people pay me to give me their opinion. There's some change, and I'm just moved across the road. Anyway, I hope you liked the video.